Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. It is release week for Princess Peach Showtime, and since that is a first-party Nintendo release, you already know that's our main segment. But on the tail end of the show, I'm going to give you my thoughts on two games that I've been playing. But first, we have some news to cover, and joining me for all of that is Game Informer's own Kyle Hilliard. Kyle, how are you?
Hey, it's me. I'm here. I made it.
You did make it, and we could not be more thrilled that you are here with us on this, the penultimate episode of All Things Nintendo under the Game Informer banner. We will have more All Things Nintendo on the other side of I guess I just the other side, right? Like that's I don't know what the other the other side
change
of
a
the barrier.
lot.
It's going to
imagine.
change everything. No, I mean there's going to be some changes, but I don't think it's going to change
mostly
that much. But yeah, we got some news to cover. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Princess Peach Showtime during the main segment. And then on the tail end of the show, as I mentioned in the intro, we will have two games that I played on a recent long flight to give my impressions of. So let's kick things off with some news here. Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, Kyle. You a fan of those classic games?
No, I don't say that as like, oh, those games are terrible. I never played them. Really, it was one of those that they just kind of bypassed me. Yeah.
God, I loved those games back in the day. Like jumping on for like I think it was Battlefront 1, and then I played it like I was kind of late to the party with Battlefront 1, and then Battlefront 2 came out like months after I discovered Battlefront 1.
Oh,
and
really?
I was just
that's funny.
Crazy about them. I love them so much. Like I'm a big Star Wars fan in general. So to have like the ability to play like these massive just fight like just skirmishes across the Star Wars universe was so much fun. And then you could take control of like the main characters of the series. I don't know. It just felt like a really great game for its time. Obviously some things have aged probably pretty poorly. I wouldn't know because I haven't jumped into the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection because it came out last week and things ain't going so great.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing. Yeah.
Oh boy, which sucks. So it's our friends Aspire who did the Tomb Raider collection.
I know, not what, like 2 weeks ago we were singing the praises of that game.
We were. Like that? Yeah. I think it might be a little longer than 2 weeks ago, but yes, okay. It was a pretty solid release. You seem to have a really good time with it. I enjoyed watching you on that episode of New Gameplay Today or Old Gameplay Yesterday, whatever we ended up branding that, because these are very old games. But that same company is back with Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. And yeah, let's get into this. So lots of network connectivity issues. There's a controversy surrounding some content in the trailer actually not being from the collection itself, but from a mod. And then there was no credit given to the modder. Like I saw the modder tweeted like, how did my version of Asajj Ventress appear in this game? And they never told me or credited me or whatever. And then people were like, oh my God, they used like a mod for the final release and they didn't credit or pay this guy. And then it came that Aspire put out a statement saying like, oh, this footage was actually like in a trailer. And it was just like we accidentally captured from a modded version instead of our version, which seems like a very weird mistake to make.
Okay, but it was from footage. It wasn't like they looked in the code of the game. Is that?
I mean, that's what I ascertained from the situation.
Right. Okay.
Also, ton of crashing issues, visual glitches, unanimated components. I saw we're going to get to this patch that's coming, but one of the things listed in the patch was one of the characters' lightsabers animations have been added.
That feels significant.
Yeah. And then various control problems as well. So it has gotten so bad that we have come full circle, Kyle. Players in the community, the Star Wars fans, are now telling those wanting to play a Star Wars Battlefront game to go check out the 2017 Star Wars Battlefront 2 from EA and DICE, which when it came out was in much rougher shape, to be fair.
Yeah.
But people were like, oh my God, just port the old games because we don't want these microtransaction riddled releases that you guys are putting out. And now people are like, no, don't put these games out. Go play Battlefront 2,
Oh,
which again,
geez. Okay.
fully acknowledging that it's in much better shape now than it was in 2017. Like I actually went and when Rise of Skywalker came out, I was so excited, and we all know how that turned out.
Then you went to the movies. You
But
felt
I was like
terrible for
so
the.
excited, and I was in like full Star Wars fever, and I noticed that like the Star Wars Battlefront 2, I think it was called like the Celebration Edition, because it was either an anniversary or maybe it was just like the celebrating the end of the Skywalker saga. It was on like a really deep discount. So I bought that and I was like, well, let's see how much better it is now than like when Reiner reviewed it back in 2017. It was like, this game is so much fun, but it is so problematic with its microtransactions and its monetization and everything. It's very much pay to win. And I had a really good time with what I played. And by the way,
Mhm.
it is a gorgeous looking game, that 2017 version. These versions, not so much.
Yeah, and I mean
But
they are older games, right? But we're talking about like the there's an expectation of them not looking like incredible, but there's visual problems, right? There's like
correct.
shortcomings, right?
Yeah. So as I alluded to before, there is a patch that's been announced by Aspire that kind of promises to fix a lot of these problems, but it's in one of those like I'll believe it when I see it modes at this point because like it's in really rough shape. And I don't know, like how bad does a game have to be in launch state in order for you to one completely ignore it, and two be like, I don't even know if you guys can fix this with patches.
Uh, that's rough.
Like I don't know, like it seems pretty rough because like this is again a game or two games that I absolutely loved in like my college years and I guess late high school, early college years. And I would love nothing more than an excuse to go back to these, especially because, there's so much just great memories that I have playing these games. And now there's like new content that they've added, but like all that is for naught if the game just doesn't function properly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully Aspire gets all these things squared away. We can have a good working version of these games. But yeah, Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection is out now on all major platforms, but I would personally recommend you holding off until we hear from people who have already taken the plunge that things are in working order.
Is this series just like cursed? Like, cause like after 2, right, 3 was in development and then got canceled, and what little we've seen from that game that was leaked like seemed exciting, right? Obviously we didn't play it, so we can't really make any assumptions about it, but like it looked cool. And then both the EA Battlefronts, for modern consoles were derided upon release, and now this is like, I don't know, Battlefront is just tough to do, I guess.
I thought you were talking about Star Wars as a whole because there was that Respawn game that was just recently canceled as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how
Um,
I feel about Star Wars these days, but
hey,
I was
Mandalorian's
sort of
been
focusing on the
pretty good.
Battlefront of it all. Uh,
I've enjoyed Mandalorian quite a lot.
I'm great. I'm happy for you, Brian.
Kyle, you hear this game Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah, I
So
love that
good
game.
good Smile Company, that good group of folks.
They make toys and stuff, right?
They do. So they revealed the new Tears of the Kingdom Link Figma figure. And pre-orders are now live. So these are the ones I'm sure you've seen Nendoroids. Those are kind of like the
Mhm.
chibi style ones.
Yeah, I
They
have one of those for Breath of the Wild, I think,
I
actually.
have so many of them. I have like just a collection. I'm looking over at my display case, and it's like I have Pokemon Nendoroids. I have Pokemon Figma. I don't know if they're Figmas, but they're like an art. Like they're known for their articulation and the fact that you can trade out like different parts.
They're cute.
And the Figmas are the more anatomically accurate ones. So superposable, comes with all kinds of different stuff to do, different expressions, different accessories. So I already have the A Link Between Worlds, I think it is,
Mm.
and Skyward Sword Link Figmas, and then a ton of Overwatch and Persona 5 Figmas and Nendoroids and all kinds of stuff. But I'm super tempted to pick this one up because I love Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think they ever put out a Breath of the Wild Figma. I think they only put out the Breath of the Wild
I don't
Nendoroid.
think so. Yeah.
So the standard edition of this comes with a Master Sword, okay, a Hylian shield, 3 facial expressions, and a hooded cape. Oddly enough, the Master Sword is not the destroyed one. You would think that would be like a I guess like a unique opportunity
Yeah, I
to
guess so. I mean, in terms of like the game, if you really want to sort of have the Link you played as in the game, you have the proper Master Sword for the majority of that game, depending on how you played it, right?
yeah,
So,
depending on how you played it.
yeah.
The deluxe edition has all of that plus various accessories playing off of his abilities. So there's one for Ultra Hand, there's one for Fuse, there's one for Ascend. So like you can actually like it's very morbid to think of, but like you can rip Link in half and put him on like the little like portal that like
Oh,
Ascend is, so it looks like he's coming out of the ground.
that's fun. That's cute.
There's like a stick with a rock on the end of it for Fuse, and then Ultra Hand. There's like a few of like the God, what are they called? The components that you can get out of like the capsule machine that you
Okay.
use in
Yeah,
Ultra
yeah.
Hand. I completely forget what they're called. The
Yeah, it's been a
devices.
while. Been a couple months here now.
And then also a glider and a bow with the deluxe version. So that seems like the way to go if you're already going to splurge this, but it is pretty pricey. So standard edition looks like it costs $61. The deluxe edition is $116. I think these are import prices, but
Mhm.
that's how you have to do it. Like Good Smile, I believe, is a Japanese company.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
I've ordered directly from them on a few occasions, and I believe the emails have often been in from Japan. So, but the plans aren't to ship until quarter 3 of next year. So, like a year and a half to wait on this.
Yeah, I Googled it and it was like, yeah, expected release 2025. I was like, oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah,
Weird.
it's they're going to take their time on this one, but hey, high quality products. I've sworn by these. It's just the wait can be excruciating at times for these things to come out. But
Yeah.
you think you're going to pick this one up?
No, I'm not really like I've sort of scaled back on like I was never a big like figurine collector. I like the Zelda amiibos. I get those. But yeah, I have that was it you said the Figma is like the cute
Those are
like
Nendoroids.
the Nendoroid. I have the Nendoroid Breath of the Wild Link, but I mostly just kind of find it annoying because it has so many accessories. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with these?
I took all the accessories from all of the Nendoroids and Figmas that I have, and I just put them all in a Ziploc bag and threw it in one of my storage boxes, the ones I'm not
Yeah,
using.
see that? Yeah, that's just like I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm getting to an age where I'm just like it's just stuff, man. It's just
Yeah.
so like but that being said, I think that figure looks really nice and I think it looks cool. I like the way it looks.
Yeah, there's been times where I'm just like, I should just, you know, dump all of this in the trash.
It
But
yeah, especially as I get older, I'm sure we're around the same age. It's like we're hitting that line soon of like, should I just throw away literally everything except my phone?
well, some days I want to throw that away too.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to throw them away because I
No,
still
no,
love them
yeah.
very dearly, and like,
I
I
mean,
have a
they're
lot of
great. They're super well designed. Like this is more just like not a criticism of the product. Like they did an awesome job. It looks great. It's more just like I said, we're getting old, Brian.
well, the thing is also like I loved having all these figures out on my desk at the Game Informer office. And
No,
now
yeah,
we
yeah.
don't have that. So it's just all in my house. So I already had figures at my house. And then when we closed our office, I brought all my stuff home, put a lot of it in storage. But then I was like, oh, well, I have a lot of my favorite figures. So I bought like extra display cases and everything. And I'm like, I could not possibly add more to this. But then every once in a while, something like this comes out and I'm like, oh, I'd love to have that. But where
Yeah.
the hell would I put it? And I look over at my display case and it's like, there's like one space, but like, is that what I want to fill that space with?
Yeah, I know I'm saying like I'm too good for stuff, but I did acquiesce recently. Maybe you're in the same boat, Brian, but when Mutant Mayhem came out, the Ninja Turtles movie,
Hmm.
they re-released a bunch of the Playmates Ninja Turtles action figures. Like you can
Oh,
like with like the original boxes, like I'm talking like the 90s, you know, figures and like they would sell them at Target. Like you would just go to Target and I bought some of those. Like I have like those old like 90s sort of just remade action figures and I did buy like 3 or 4 of those and I'm in that position now. I'm like I don't know where to put these things. I just like they're just so nostalgic for me that I was like I remember staring at the back of these boxes for hours and I'm like oh, I gotta have this in my house, but now it's just on a shelf, and I'm like, what do I do with you now? Should I take you out of the box and like play with you like I used
No,
to? I
never,
don't
never.
know.
No, yeah, I'm in that same boat where if I saw those old school Ninja Turtles ones, that was like those were the toys that
Yeah,
I obsessed over when I was a kid. If I saw those at a store, I would 100% try to pick them up because they are
like
just
you know what I'm talking
up.
about, right? Like these, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like these you can just get these are at Target, dude. Like these are not like I didn't special order these. Like they're just like in the toy aisle at Target.
I So when I went to San Diego Comic-Con back in 2016, they had a Ninja Turtles like exclusive. Oh god, forget the company that does them. It's like a con exclusive that you can get where it was way too much money, but I was like, well, this is worth it. It was the figures modeled after the turtles in the '89 arcade game.
Oh, yes, I think I did. I think you showed me these.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
okay.
had them on my desk at Game Informer
Okay,
for
yes.
3 years, four
Yeah.
years. And basically the box looks like the arcade cabinet, and then
Yeah,
it
that's
has like a
fun.
Velcro like display front, and you pull that down, and it looks like the arcade deck with all four of the things, and they all line up with whatever turtle is in the box. So like, on one side it's Michelangelo, and you can kind of see them if Kyle and I are on video here. Unfortunately, the listeners are not
I
seeing this, but I have them right here
I do
over my
remember
shoulder.
those on your desk. Yeah,
Those were
those are
ones that
cool.
I'm very happy to have picked those up, but all right, well, we'll move on. This
Yeah.
is all very enthralling for the listeners, I'm sure. Kyle, the Game Developers Conference.
Yes.
It happened in San Francisco this past week, and there were panels for both Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Brothers Wonder. So this first part, I'm reading this story over on IGN. The Tears of the Kingdom panel revealed that the developers were actually afraid that Ultra Hand would absolutely demolish the physics of that world. So they actually had to develop two guides or two goals to guide them. One was to create an entirely physics driven world, which is different from what Breath of the Wild was. And two, create a system where unique interactions happen without any dedicated implementation.
Mm.
So, according to physics producer, which incredible title,
Yeah, right. No kidding. That is a cool title.
Takahiro Takayama, it wasn't uncommon for them to hear things in the office like it broke, it went flying, and he would just look at them and say, "I know, we'll deal with it later." And then they came about the idea because of that of making everything in the game physics driven. So, like for example, gates in Breath of the Wild weren't physics driven, but when they made them that way in Tears of the Kingdom, you can lift up gates and everything using Ultra Hand. It led to fun new ways to solve puzzles. And this also carried over into the sound design, oddly enough, with sound programmer Junya Osada talking about how each object has voxels embedded in them to dictate how they sound in various situations. So the article
Weird.
on IGN points out that there's no wagon or paddle boat sound, but the sound was instead created when the wheels roll or objects hit the water, and then the sound changes based on the size, shape, and material of the things that are interacting. And there was an interview with senior
Insane.
director Takuhiro Dota on IGN, and the way he described it was basically a physics engine for sound,
That's
which
wild.
I don't know how this game exists, to be honest. Like we've already talked about, like just the fact that such a vast world runs as well as it does on Switch, and like all the different physics-based stuff, like Ultra Hand not completely crashing the
Yeah.
7-year-old Switch hardware. But like, I
It's
mean,
lunacy.
the way they're getting into like the audio and that the way that works and how they just basically like everybody's like, oh, it's just DLC for Breath of the Wild. It's like, no, they did some pretty substantial changes under the hood, if nothing else. But I mean, there's also a lot of stuff that they did differently in this. So I would encourage you to read the full interview and recap of the panel on IGN.com. But Kyle, how do you react to this news or this panel?
I mean, it's cool. I love just because they did the one on Wonder as well, which I think you're going to talk about soon. But like, it is, it's this rare instance of Nintendo like pulling back the curtain a little bit. Like they did a similar panel for Breath of the Wild, and they shared like all kinds of like really uncharacteristically Nintendo stuff of
Mm-hmm.
like stuff that got cut, like original art that they like ended up scrapping, and like what it was going to look like. And it's like I hope that they see value in that, because like that stuff's really interesting and fun to see, and like I'm glad they did a panel for Tears of the Kingdom, but I hope that they don't feel like they have to restrict themselves to GDC to share this kind of stuff. Like we want to know like what it went into making these games, you know?
Well, I mean, I did get a little bit out of that with my interviews. You know, last year I had two interviews, joint interviews with Eiji Aonuma and Hidemaru Fujibayashi, the producer and director, respectively.
Of
And they
Wonder.
did
Oh no, right, of Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the
Right.
Kingdom, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So they shared like, you know, how the idea for Ultra Hand came about with me and like, you know, behind the scenes stuff of like, oh, we like it when players feel like they can cheat like a puzzle or something because that's fun for them and it's cool for us to see like how people break the game that we build even if they're not doing it in like the way that we intended them to solve it, or you know, the fact that like Hidemaru Fujibayashi was just kind of like messing around with like Breath of the Wild components, and he was like, what if we gave a player a way to like piece things together like this, and like we could make a tank the way that I made a tank in Breath of the Wild, like with like kind of like mod tools essentially. And
Yeah.
that was how it ultimately came out. So they do get into it a little bit, but I agree. Like it would be nice
No,
if they would peel back the curtain a little bit more in
yeah, I mean, I
interviews.
love that interview, dude. Though, and like, I'm glad to see them sort of more and more doing that and being willing to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when was the last time I went to GDC? Was it 2016, 2018? I don't know. I've been to two GDCs. I was supposed to go to a third one in 2020, but womp womp.
What happened?
Well, we were all better off 4 years ago. That's what I've heard. So basically, I went to one that was with the Splatoon team because this was like, you know, I think right after no, this was after
Two.
Splatoon 1
Oh,
came out. So it
Splatoon
must have
1.
been
Okay.
because I think Splatoon 1 came out in 2015, I think. And then I went to GDC 2016, which is after the first one after Splatoon launched. And that was when they had a Splatoon panel. And they were very transparent there as well. But like, you know, um, Nogami is one of the kind of the newer guards. He's not, you know, the old school Nintendo guy. Like, I mean, he's been around for decades, which is
Mm,
wild when you think about it. It's like when I did the cover
yeah.
story for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's like, oh yeah, Naoki Hamaguchi, the new face of Final Fantasy because he's the director of Remake and Rebirth, and he was also like a designer on 13 and everything. But then you look at him, it's like he's been there more than 20 years.
I know
It's just like, you know,
it's nice to see that in the game industry. We don't see that enough.
yeah, but like it's the same deal with Nintendo where it's like you see somebody like Shiro Mori who was the director of Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and it's like, oh, look at him like working with the seasoned vet Takashi Tezuka, and it's like you look at Shiro Mori and he's like, oh, he worked on Mario Sunshine.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, these people have been here forever, but they just feel like the new guys because they haven't been there since 1984.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, so we'll use that as a segue to get over to the other panel that you had already mentioned, and I had mentioned as well, Super Mario Brothers Wonder. And I didn't see any kind of like follow up stuff, but I did see that both Tezuka and Mori were there. And the editorial director at Digital Eclipse, the studio that's behind like the Cowabunga collection and Atari 50, and former games journalist, by the way, Chris
Yeah.
Kohler,
Chris is great. No,
he
Chris.
was on hand, and luckily he live tweeted some of the more interesting stuff related to the Mario Brothers Wonder panel. And so when I did the cover story, I'd actually heard about these like massive brainstorming sessions that Nintendo had for Super Mario Brothers Wonder. And during this GDC panel, they actually showed some of the sketches and concept art that came out of those brainstorming sessions. And some of the drawings are obvious ones that were used, like Mario getting that like tall and skinny effect,
Mm.
or like the silhouette wonder effect. And then other ones were definitely not used. Like there was one of Mario on a unicycle. There was surfing Mario. There was one where Mario looks like he was turned into a berry and has to avoid being eaten by Yoshis. Those all sound
These
like
all
fun
sound
ones.
fun. Yeah.
And they showed another slide where they tested some of the prototypes of Wonder effects. And it looks like Surfing Mario actually made it to the prototype phase, along with one where Mario is running on top of different colored balloons, and another with a giant Goomba that I guess he's like running across. And then they also showed footage of one where Mario's head turns into a giant block version of his 8-bit sprite, and you have to avoid getting your head destroyed or eaten.
I saw that one. That's pretty wild. I like
That
that
looks
one.
like like another one of those weird ones that I probably would have popped for that one if that happened in the game and like I got it and then like Mario's head turned into like a 8-bit version of his head and like you have to avoid getting like the individual blocks or individual pixels getting destroyed.
Yeah.
That's a fun concept.
Yeah, that's cool.
And something that actually struck me as interesting was they actually dove into their online philosophy, which was boiled down into 2 points. Because you remember how the online worked, right? Where it's like you could have friends in there, but it's like you're only doing races, or you can have like kind of ghosts of other players show you stuff, but they can't interact with your world.
Mhm.
So their guiding principles were how can parents safely give online play to their children, and how can we create a world without harassment? So, I mean, I guess if those are your
Noble.
guiding principles,
Yeah.
they found the ways to do it. So, I mean, I guess
That's
that
great.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
I that is a thing. Like, I like that push in online gaming lately. Like, I feel like Death Stranding. I don't know if did it first. Is like the fair thing to say. I'm sure others did it first, but like Death Stranding was the big one for me, where it was like the online interaction was you could only go in a positive direction. There was no opportunity to do anything negative in that game, and I'm like, yeah, like just close that door. Like, who cares, Like, just like let's like make everything if when you're interacting online positive. And I feel like Wonder did a good job of that, even if I personally was a little sort of overwhelmed by like just the amount of stuff on screen that was happening, and it turned it off pretty quickly. I like that idea of like only positive interactions. Like, we're just not even going to have the ability to for people to make life hard for you.
Yeah. I mean, that it's a smart route for a series like Nintendo,
Yeah.
but I would still very much like just the ability to, I don't know, get friends together and play online in a standard way instead of like, hey, we got a race now, or
Right, because that local co-op, like it's only local in Wonder, right? If I
yeah,
remember. Okay, yeah,
like actual co-op through the levels is only in local. Yeah.
right. Okay,
So
weird.
if you want to see the pictures, and there's actually a video of the stuff I'm mentioning from this Mario Wonder panel, you can check out Chris Kohler's thread on his Twitter profile at Kobun Heat, KOBUNHEAT. Kyle, we're going to end on this since I know you are a big Metal Gear Solid guy. What were your thoughts
True.
on Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1?
I'm glad it exists. It was good. It was like I played about an hour or two of each game.
Mm-hmm.
One, two, and three. I mean, there's other games on there, but those are the primary ones. I didn't really play the Switch version, which was the one I was most interested in. But I mean, like, yeah, I was happy with it. I'm glad it exists. There's more that could have been done, but to have those games available on contemporary platforms was awesome. I feel like you're setting me up for some kind of disappointment or something.
Well, Konami has acknowledged the existence of Volume 2 in a little bit of a, I
Oh,
mean,
I missed that. Really?
somewhat,
That's
somewhat.
cool.
So
All
I'm
right.
reading this on NintendoLife.com. Konami had a Q&A, and Metal Gear Solid producer Noriaki Okamura responded to a fan asking about Volume 2. And according to Okamura, the titles for a potential Volume 2 haven't yet been decided, nor have they decided on a release date. So
Okay. But that
it's,
does, yeah, I see what you're saying. That does say like it's being worked on. We just haven't figured it out yet.
yeah. So
Which
the
is like
first one,
they wouldn't have called it volume 1, I feel like, without some kind of intention for more editions.
correct. So the first one included Metal Gear, Metal Gear NES, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. So with that in mind, like what games would you like to see in Volume 2?
Um I mean, I guess I'm just about to list the rest ostensibly, but
Exactly,
like
yeah.
4 is the big one. Like 4 is only playable on PlayStation 3 platforms. It's the only way to play 4 to this day. There's no other way to play 4. But then yeah, Portable Ops, Peace Walker, and Ghost Babel. I would really love to have Ghost Babel on like some sort of like regular platform. I actually streamed the entirety of Ghost Babel on my personal Twitch channel in like 2019, and it's because I had a Game Boy Color cart of that game and I was
Oh,
able to like stream it there. That's like the only way to play that game is you have the Game Boy Color cart. and it's a cool game. Ghost Babel holds up surprisingly well. Like, it is a full-on Metal Gear game on Game Boy Color in an impressive way.
I mean, with all those games, if they put that out, but there's no Metal Gear Solid 4, is it a failure?
I mean, I am part of the problem in that it is not, because I just want all the Metal Gear games, right? If they were like, you know what they could, I mean, if they did like the volume 2 was like just the portable games, I would be okay with that. Like, if they want to do Ghost Babel, Acid 1, Acid 2, Portable Ops, and Peace Walker as its own sort of separate collection, I would be pleased with that. I would complain, where's Metal Gear Solid 4? Because like, it's weird now that like it's getting weirder and weirder that game is not easily playable. But I wouldn't consider it a failure. I would consider it like a stopgap, a
Yeah.
welcome stopgap.
Well, that game, from my understanding, that game was designed very specifically with the extremely unique PS3 architecture in mind. So I think that's probably the reason why it's not.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that a lot about many games, but I mean, I think it ultimately just comes down to like, they don't have the resources or want to put resources toward it, right? It's not some problem that they can't solve, right? Like,
I mean, I don't
it's
know.
total. I mean, I guess
Kyle,
it's
game
true,
development is easy.
right? Yeah, it's like people can figure that stuff out. They have for like years. Like, you can I'm sure they have emulated Metal Gear Solid 4 on a PC, right? Like, I'm sure that people have it up and running on PC. It's a problem that can be solved, but it's an expensive problem to be solved. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just going to take a little bit more heavy lifting than getting a Game Boy Color game, up and running. And by the way, I embarrassingly, I apologize to everybody listening, I forgot Twin Snakes. Twin Snakes needs to be sort of on some kind of contemporary platform, and like, maybe Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes and Metal Gear Solid 4 is its own collection.
What about Revengeance?
Revengeance is a spin-off as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it is
Yeah.
canon, but like, it doesn't, if Revengeance is never included on a Metal Gear collection, I personally wouldn't be disappointed. I know that game is beloved. I played through it once and was satisfied with it, but wasn't really like over the moon for it or anything. And it just felt so separate from the main story that I would be okay if it wasn't included in a collection. But for the sake of like getting everything in there, I think it would be nice to have it be included for sure. I mean, honestly, the fact that I kind of forgot about it as we're talking about Metal Gear speaks volumes to it. I just realized I streamed all those games in like 2019 and 2020. I did Ghost Babel, I did Revengeance, and I did Twin Snakes, like all over the course of a year.
Wow. So you're ready to dive back in 5 years
I've
later.
played them all recently, which is funny. 4 is the only one I haven't played. I think I booted up 4 in like 2019 was the last time I played it. I had to pull a PS3 out of a closet and like hook it up. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only way to play it. But that's one of those games I'll never get rid of, because it's like, at this point, there's no other way to play it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame that there are so many games that just are not playable on modern systems. I mean, we get a lot of that with Nintendo as well.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, man, you guys could just bring these over and we would be like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD.
Yeah. Well, I also really want the mobile, I think it's called, I don't know what it's called. It's like Metal Gear Solid Portable or something, but it was like only available on Japanese mobile devices. Like, it was like it was like an N-Gage era Metal Gear Solid game, and it serves as a prequel to Metal Gear Solid 2. I've never played it. It's like disappeared from existence. I have tried to reach out to the developers, which was this like European company, to try to put a feature together for it, and have never had much luck. But it's like this totally, completely unplayed Metal Gear Solid, canonical Metal Gear Solid game.
Oh my God.
That I think introduced Raiden before Metal Gear Solid 2. I know I'm just sort of like talking at you, Brian, because I don't know if you know these characters.
I am not a Metal Gear Solid fan, but I respect it, and that's why I had you on, because we had this news. Also,
I'm excited because I missed that news. I didn't see that, so that's cool that it's like at least Konami's like working on it as near as we can tell.
Got a live reaction from Kyle
Yeah,
Hilliard.
right.
So, Kyle, before we wrap up this news segment, I do want to give a little bit of a plug here. I want to call out that we've been doing a bracket tournament on GameInformer.com for the last couple of weeks. And the goal was much like the tournament that is going on in college basketball right now, whittled down from a field of 64 games to the final game with the goal to find the best or greatest game of all time. And we are currently in the final stages of it. We are down to the last 4 games. And the matchups are Red Dead Redemption 2 going against The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and The Last of Us against The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So, man,
Yeah.
it's a murderer's row. The
I
community did a good job. There's some results I don't fully agree with, but hey, the will of the people, right?
I know. We were talking about it on the Game Informer show a little bit, and I was so sure that Breath of the Wild was going to take it all the way. And I was so sure Elden Ring was going to take out Skyrim, and both of those have been knocked out, which is just like blows my mind. I can't believe it.
I thought we were going to get a little bit of recency bias. Not that it's not an amazing game in its own right, but I thought Baldur's Gate 3 might have a chance to take it.
Yeah.
But I mean, The Witcher 3 won the vote back in 2018 when we did this a similar thing, not a bracket tournament, but you actually held a massive reader vote.
Oh, right.
For our 300th issue,
Yeah,
and The Witcher 3
right.
won that. So I thought that might repeat because it's not like people have stopped liking The Witcher 3.
Yeah. That's good.
I'm actually surprised that all the games except for Red Dead Redemption, right, are older than The Witcher 3. So it's not like
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah.
yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 is the only one that is newer than The Witcher 3. Ocarina of Time is 98, Last of Us is what, 2013, Elder Scrolls is 2011, and Witcher 3 was 2015.
I think Ocarina might have a chance here, honestly. I think just like our readership, maybe it's like we're a little bit older, maybe or something. But I think Ocarina might have a shot. We'll
Maybe.
see.
I mean, but yeah, I also thought Elden Ring would have a chance to go all the way, just given
Yeah.
the love that game
I
has.
mean, I certainly voted for it over Skyrim.
So this round ends on Monday. So if you're listening to this over the weekend, that is your chance to vote. And then the 2 winners will face off against each other to ultimately determine the 2024 reader voted greatest game of all time. If you want to vote, you can head to GameInformer.com to make your selections and then come back again starting on Monday to vote for the overall winner. Kyle, but out of those 4, I'm guessing you're taking Ocarina of Time?
Yeah, I don't know if are we saying personal or who I think will win? I mean, personal is Ocarina of Time for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, who I think will win, I think I'm gonna get Ocarina. I think has a real shot here.
Yeah, I mean, all three of its competitors are extremely worthy. I think Skyrim is my least favorite out of this group, but it's not like that's anything to sneeze at. I mean, it's still probably
God, no,
like
of course not.
a top 30 of all time for me because I loved Skyrim. There were so many glitches at the time when I played it, but
Yeah.
there's a reason that it's been ported to every single system in the time since.
Yeah.
But yeah, my personal one is Ocarina of Time as well. I mean, I'm hosting all things Nintendo for the past 128 weeks. But yeah, I mean, I would also not be surprised if Red Dead 2 took it or The Last of Us.
Yeah, I don't think any of those would surprise me at this point.
Yeah.
I think Skyrim might surprise me. It sounds like we're coming after Skyrim. It sounds like we're crapping all over Skyrim, but but Skyrim's a fantastic game, but I don't see it hanging with those other 3 for some reason.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised that it was the winner of its region, but
Yeah,
hey,
same.
it shows that game still has a lot of love and people are going to just go crazy when Elder Scrolls 6 finally comes out. But Kyle, we're going to take our first break of this episode, and when we get back, we'll be getting some of your impressions and thoughts in your review of Princess Peach Showtime. We will be right back. In 2005, Nintendo released Super Princess Peach, a rare starring role for the Mushroom Kingdom royalty, and nearly 20 years later, Princess Peach Showtime gives her another chance in the spotlight, but in a completely different style of gameplay. Kyle, you have been playing Princess Peach Showtime. You have beaten Princess Peach Showtime. You've written a review of Princess Peach Showtime, so you are here now to talk about your experience with this game. So how did you end up liking this title?
Yeah, it's funny that you use the term spotlight, because one of the things that I actually quite like about the game is the sort of theater aesthetic of it, and there's always a spotlight following Peach as she like moves through every level, and I was like, oh, that's charming. I like that. But your big question was just like, what do I think, right? Like, what's my review, I suppose, right?
Well, let's start with, because you talked about the theater aesthetic. A couple weeks ago, I had Alex Van Aken on, who did a preview of Princess Peach Showtime. He kind of gave the rundown of what the game is and like the core concepts at work. But I guess for anybody who missed that, if you just kind of want to give an elevator pitch for what this game even is.
Yeah. So yeah, it's basically a platformer. Like, it's not exclusively a platformer, but if I were to put it in a Nintendo genre, I would say platformer, 2D platformer, basically. And it's just like the premise is Peach is going to see a show at a theater, which is like, this is me getting into like my Mario lore brain in a way that's completely unnecessary and Nintendo doesn't care about. But she has a suitcase with her when she goes to the theater,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, are we to presume that this takes place after Mario Odyssey? Because like the big thing about Mario Odyssey, spoilers for the end of Mario Odyssey, is like there's a big fight between Mario and Bowser, presumably for the hand of Peach. And Peach is kind of like, screw you guys. And she gets like literally like a rolling suitcase, and she's like, I'm going to go explore the world. And then you see Peach in different levels. If you go back and replay things, you'll see Peach there, and she'll have her rolling suitcase with her in a new outfit. And so she rolls up to this theater with a rolling suitcase, and I'm like, is this just another stop on her tour of the world after
That's a
Mario
very fun
Odyssey?
wink to it, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I was trying to remember. I was like, I'm sure she had luggage in Mario Sunshine. Is Peach, does she just like always have luggage with her? I'm not sure. Maybe
She's a world traveler.
I guess so. But anyway, you're at a theater, and bad guys take over, and she has to save the day. It's basically what it comes down to. It's like there's not really this sort of danger is very, very Nintendo, in that it's like the plot like doesn't really matter. Bad guys are here and you need to stop them. And then what that turns into is like you go to different stages, and Peach becomes different characters by putting on different outfits, which give her a whole different set of abilities for every level. And there's like 10 outfits, and each of those 10 outfits has like 3 levels, basically.
Okay. Now here's where I thought you were going with that discussion about Mario lore and it being like a stage play. I thought you were going to say it was playing off Super Mario Brothers 3 and the fact that that was all considered to be like a set, right? Like the way like everything was happening on a stage play. Like it starts with the curtain lifting and all the stage components have shadows. Like they're not actually parts of like a world, but more so like a play.
Well, I actually started my first draft of my review was like, Peach is no stranger to performing in a play in a video game. But then I had that moment of like, wait, you couldn't play as her in Mario 3.
So you could not. Famously captured.
Yeah. Did Mario 2 have like a stage sort of thing for the character select? Were there curtains, or am I like totally misremembering?
No, I think there were curtains in the stage select or the character select. But at the same time, like I feel like Miyamoto has said like he considers all Mario games to be kind of like a stage play, and that's why like these different actors are just playing different parts.
Yeah, that's
kind of like why
friends,
Bowser and Mario can go-karting a year before he captures Mario's girlfriend.
Yeah, it's all a performance. Okay, yeah, but they lean into it like fully for Peach, and that's actually one of my favorite parts of the game. Is like just the sort of aesthetic. You're like clearly on sets for every level. Like characters who fly through the air are on wires from the rafters. Like you exit, stage left to finish the level, and there's always a spotlight on her, as I mentioned from the beginning. And like that stylistic stuff is cool, and I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely grabs your attention, and it plays off that very well from what I've seen. I've not had a chance to play it quite yet, but I've watched a ton of footage and I've seen all the trailers and everything. And I do like how they are really playing into that stage or the play aesthetic.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there are 10 costumes.
Yeah, there's a little more than 10. Yeah. I don't think I can say the exact number. I'm going to assume I'm not supposed to say the exact number, but they've shown a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
If not all of them. They might have shown all of them. I wasn't watching the trailers as closely as you were, Brian, but yeah.
And there
So
are 3 stages per costume.
yeah, and there's like some other there's like little side modes you can play, like, endless modes and things like that. But the way they distribute it is like it's not like you play the 3 cowboy levels and then you move on to the 3 ninja levels. Like you play a ninja level, a cowboy level, and then later you might play a cowboy and a ninja level. And then
Okay.
there's a set of levels where it's like you're making your decision about which ones you want to tackle. You basically like have all of them in front of you, and you're like, okay, I need to beat all of these, but I can tackle them in any order I want, which is nice that you just have you can take it in any direction you please at that point. It's near the end of the game.
Do you feel like 3 is the correct number? Or are there costumes where you're like, oh man, that was so much fun, I wish I had more? Or are there some that you're like, 3 levels feels like a lot for this one gimmick?
Yeah, I mean the night. So I guess we can. Yeah, my score for the game is a 7.5, and it's one of those I talked to you about it. It's like a little bit of a shoulder shrug of a game. It's like it's solid. It's fine, but it doesn't send me over the moon in any way. It's just mostly okay, and that extends. The reason I mention that here is because that kind of extends to like the costumes. Like there were costumes I really liked. Like the ninja costume was a lot of fun because it's like you have these like stealth abilities. Like Peach can kind of like sidle up against a wall and she drops this like curtain that blocks her, and when she goes underwater she holds like a reed to her mouth to breathe, and she like holds up fake grass when she's walking through tall grass. But then you can also like jump on walls and you can attack enemies and stuff like that. So like the ninja levels I liked a lot, but after I beat the 3 I wasn't like, yeah, give me more ninja levels. I was like, okay, yeah, I got my ninja fill. But then there's stuff like the one that sort of I sort of avoided and like didn't want to play were the detective levels,
Mm-hmm.
because they're very there's no action to them. And I'm not saying like you need action. You don't need to be a ninja in every level, but it was a lot of like you go talk to characters to try to solve a mystery, and it's all very laborious, and it's one of those things because the game is very easy by design. It was kind of like, well, I know what the solution is here. You're just sort of making me jump over hurdles to get to it. Or if I don't know the solution, it's not really a big deal for me to get it wrong and just keep like, saying, I think it's this one. I think it's this one until I had the right answer. So like the detective one was like, I didn't really want to play those, but then at the same time, it's like, well, it's only 3, so that wasn't too bad, right?
So even the worst one didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome too much.
No, like that. I think my least favorite was the detective. Like that was probably the worst one, and even my big like takeaway from that is like it's okay. Like none of them were outright terrible. Some were better than others, but none were outright terrible, which I was grateful for.
Now, were any like blow your socks off amazing?
I mean, the ninja was about the one that I liked the most. And then like the dashing thief, I think is its name, is one that uses like a grapple gun, which is kind of fun. But nothing that I was like, oh man, they should just do a whole game where Peach is just a ninja or whatever. I didn't feel that way about any of them.
I think Alex described it kind of like it has a little bit of Mario Party DNA in the sense that like there's a lot of kind of mini games involved. Did you get that sense as well?
There's the I'm going to pronounce this wrong. I think patissier, or the cook, the bakery chef Peach.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a little more mini game esque. Like you're not really running around and platforming. You're like creating cakes, which is a matter of like drawing frosting on cakes and stuff like that. But like I said, the detective one was less actiony, but pretty much all the other ones are platformy or combat or actiony in some way. So I totally understand why Alex presumed that, because if you play 3 levels and one of them is the cooking one, you definitely are going to be like, oh, this, yeah, okay, this. I'm sure there's more like this where I'm playing almost something more akin to a mini game, but ultimately it was just the bakery chef Peach.
Ah, okay. So when you're playing through this game, you told me that it like kind of like a Kirby level of difficulty, or did you say it was even easier than a Kirby game?
It's easier than a Kirby game, but I definitely put it in that Kirby zone. Where like every Kirby game, with the exception of maybe the most recent one. Wait. The most recent one was actually a remake. The gosh, Forgotten Lands. Is that what it was
Yeah.
called? That's I like that one gets quite challenging at a certain point. So maybe that wouldn't be the best first game for a kid. But Kirby has always been very much like this would be a if you're interested in video games and you're a young player, Kirby is a great foot in the door of this medium of entertainment. And Peach feels like that. Like Peach feels like a pretty good first game for maybe a young player that isn't quite ready for the challenge of Mario but likes that world and likes Peach. It's a very easy game, but one of the issues I ran into was like it would hit like certain levels of challenge which were and this is me bragging, not a problem for me. I had no problem with Princess Peach. I speed ran this game. I was a pro. But there were certain sequences where I was like, "Oh, this sequence of jumps is like weirdly tricky," or like this combat sequence where I have to press timed button presses is like I could see if you're a young player, because I have a daughter she's past this point of video games, but like I don't know, I'm maybe like 5 or 6. Like I feel like they would start Peach and like it and think it looks cool and get excited about Peach, but then I worry that they would hit a wall for these handful of like platforming sequences or timed button press combat sequences where they would just get frustrated and give up. So like
Hmm.
it's like it's a very easy game by design. That is not a criticism, to be clear. Like it is meant to be easy, and I recognize that. But it's like sometimes like I wish it had almost been easier, or alternatively, like I wish it had been harder. Like I wish it had hit that point of like, oh, you've been playing Nintendo games your whole life, and you've never gotten to, and you've only really played like as a Princess Peach like ultimately once in a starring role. Here's a new challenging Nintendo game starring Princess Peach. Like I would have liked that, but as it stands right now, it kind of floats somewhere in the middle, which
Kind of
is
like a no man's land.
yeah, like I almost wish it had been balanced one way or the other. Like let's go all in on making it like super easy for young players, or let's like make it harder for more veteran players who are just Nintendo fans. And right now it kind of sits in the middle.
Huh.
And this developer it's Good Feel, which
Yeah, so I was going to ask that actually because they've kept it secret for so
yeah,
long.
they
Why
don't
did
like
they
to.
not, why did they
I
hide
don't.
this?
I have no idea. They just don't like to share that stuff, I guess. But Good Feel is their to me the one that I always think of with Good Feel is they did WarioWare Shake It or Wario Land Shake It for the Wii,
Okay,
which is
that's the
like a
one you think
fan
of?
for the developer Good Feel.
Yeah,
Yeah, why is it?
I always think of the Yoshi games, Yoshi's Crafted World and Yoshi's Woolly World.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess those are the more like recent examples of solid games. But I liked Shake It so much, and even today, if you go looking at Shake It, like it's kind of like oh man, games like I don't know of many other games that look like this
Mhm.
because it's this really like high quality animation, and that was a game that had like a great level of challenge that I liked. Where the Yoshi games, Peach is still easier than Yoshi. It's like a weird spectrum, right? Because it's probably like Peach, Kirby, Yoshi in terms of like easy to hard. I think like Yoshi probably is at the top.
There are some pretty challenging levels in those Yoshi games.
Yeah, yeah, and they're fun. But I mean, my big takeaway for Peach is that it's like it's okay, which is always like the toughest like review to write for us, where it's not bad, it's not terrible, it's also not amazing or fantastic. It's just this kind of middle of the road platformer that I'm sure will find fans. But for me, it was very much like cotton candy. Like I played it, I had a good time. I don't think it's going to linger with me at all. I'm happy that Peach has her own game. I think it's more interesting and more fun than what little I've played of Super Princess Peach. I did not play a lot of that game. But it's just kind of like a middle of the road Nintendo game. It's perfectly fine.
So with that in mind, though, that makes it very difficult to kind of answer this question, which is how would you recommend this game to somebody? Like, if somebody was like,
Right.
"Hey, there's a new Peach game. Do you think I'd like it?"
I mean, first of all, if you like love that character, like whoever you are, like I think you would be you'll be happy to have a solid Peach starring video game. I think the other people that I would like specifically recommend it for are like young players who like Peach and maybe their parents are gamers. Like I still think it's a game that like if you have a 5 or 6 year old maybe who's like if you have a 5 or 6 year old child who's like I like Princess Peach, like this would be a good like hey let's play this together. It's not co-op, but it's one that like you could sit down and play with your child and I think they would have a good time. And if they do hit those walls of frustration, you can like just help them get through it no problem.
Do you think this game, along with and then this is my theory, that ever since, the success of the Mario movie, or maybe even Nintendo's projected success of the Mario movie before it was even released, because, games take a while to develop. If you look at kind of the games that Mario or Nintendo is spitting out right now, largely focused on the Mario cast, right? So we had Mario Wonder. We recently had Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake. We're getting Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon remake or remaster, just in the form of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. We're getting Princess Peach Showtime. Like we're really kind of leaning into the Mushroom Kingdom cast. I don't know if it's more than we typically do, but it feels like it maybe is a little bit more with all the characters getting kind of their own titles. I'm surprised we haven't gotten like Donkey Kong Country Returns on Switch, the Wii U version.
Oh, that'd be nice.
But
Yeah.
like it feels like they're kind of playing into the fact that there's a whole new generation of people who know these characters now or have an affection for these characters. Like I know a bunch of like my nephew had never played a Mario game or anything, but because my brother took him to the Mario movie in theaters, like he knows who Mario is, and I was able to give him like Mario toys for Christmas, and he was like playing with the Bowser and the Mario and having a great time. And I don't think that would have happened a Christmas ago. So, do you think that is kind of the strategy Nintendo's playing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's like to say that like they were like, all right, let's move forward with the movie and let's start prepping Princess Peach as like to coincide the movie. I don't think it's quite that direct. I mean, I think there's been a demand for like another Princess Peach game for a long time, and if anything, the movie just sort of confirmed their assumptions. Like I would bet that Peach was probably in development as long as, if not longer than the Mario movie. You know what I mean?
Wow, you think as in
In terms of
development
like,
as long as the movie was in development?
I'm trying to think of the timeline. When the movie came out last year, it was 2023,
Yeah.
and they were probably working on that movie for like 3 or 4 years, and they were probably working on Peach for like 2 or 3. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess they could have been connected,
Maybe once they
really.
saw the direction the story was going and they're like, "Oh, Peach is going to be like one of the main characters and like action stars of this movie. Maybe we should do a game that stars her."
Yeah, could be. I guess the only thing that this is all just like, I'm making assumptions here, but like if the Mario movie hadn't come out last year, if there was no Mario movie, I still think this game would exist.
Okay.
But I think that there's no doubt that they recognized like the value of the movie will give to this game, right? They go hand in hand and they're going to help each other. But I bet that they had been wanting to make another Peach starring game for a while. But this is all just assumptions. I don't know anything.
And as far as I've seen, there's nothing like quite so problematic as what we had in Super Princess Peach, where her superpower was she gets very emotional.
No, no, I did have a moment of fear in the beginning because you have like when you're not dressed up as a specific character with special abilities, Peach has like a ribbon that she can use to like effectively hit like friendly NPCs with
Hmm.
to like make them find energy within themselves. Like it's like getting a hug from someone you love when you need it or something, right? Like it will
She
fill you with
beats you into
energy.
submission.
Yeah, and like the one of the first things you do is there's this like little, they're called theats, I think, which are like the friendly NPCs in the game.
Hmm.
There was a theat who was like standing next to this vine with a sword, looking sad, and Princess Peach hit him with her ribbon, and he came to life and found the energy, to slice down the vines. And I was like, oh no, is this a game where Peach is going around and like helping people to be successful, right? Like she like she's not successful on her own, but she's helping, these presumably male theats like find it in themselves to be heroes. And I was like, I don't think that's what we want from Peach. I think we want Peach to be the hero. But thankfully that is not the case. That was just like, one of her many powers in the game is that she can do that. And then like 99% of the rest of the game is like her being the hero on her own. I was like, okay, that's good.
I mean, to be fair, she is already very successful. She's a literal princess.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's a birthright, that's like, she didn't arrive to that on her own.
We need to dive into the Princess Peach lineage. Actually, we need to get to the bottom of her bloodline.
Exactly right. Well, according to the movie, she's just a human who got trapped in, Mario or the Toadstool Kingdom, and they were just like, "Yeah, you're cool. Let's."
The Toads just coronated her immediately.
Yeah, they're like, "Yeah, you're queen now." But no,
Hey.
she is very much the hero in this game, and the finale's really cool. Like these games always have, on that sort of, if we're talking about like Kirby and Yoshi platformers and stuff, the ending's always really fun, and there's a great final boss.
Now, is there any kind of like bonus levels or anything? Like, Mario Wonder had a really fun final boss, really like unique final boss, and then it's like, oh, now you get to go do the special world, and these things are insanely hard.
Um, if there is, I didn't really encounter it, and that's like maybe if there is a bunch of bonus stuff, like maybe that's like a criticism I levy against the game is like I wasn't that interested in pursuing it. I was like, I beat the final boss and I was like, okay, I'm all full up on Princess Peach levels. I'm not really that excited to potentially find more.
All right. Well, anything else we need to know from your review before we wrap up this segment and take our final break?
And yeah, no, I don't think so. So it's a fine game, right? Like it's not to sound dismissive, but it's not it's not this like amazing incredible platformer that you need to make sure you make time for in 2024. It's like it's a solid. It's like, oh, Princess Peach got her own game, and it's pretty fun. It's sort of my big takeaway. My frankly boring takeaway.
Well, if you want to read Kyle's full thoughts, you can do so on GameInformer.com. We are going to take our final break of this episode. When we return, we'll be giving our thoughts on a couple of smaller recent Switch releases. We will be right back. One of the very first games I played as a child was an NES title called Contra. Now, the developer, WayForward, has released a remake of that original game, well, I guess a loose remake, calling it Contra Operation Galuga. So, Kyle, were you ever a Contra fan?
My Contra was Contra 4.
Okay. On SNES, right?
Yes. The gosh, what was it? The something wars? I'm embarrassing myself.
Alien Wars.
Alien Wars. Yeah, that was my Contra. That's the one that I really played a lot. And then the Shattered Soldier on PS2 I weirdly got into as well. But yeah, I know, random, right? But so like I have affection for Contra for sure. And WayForward is a fantastic developer. I really like what WayForward is doing just across the board in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to hear what you think of this one for sure.
So it's a remake in the loosest possible terms. Like the first level it starts and it's just like, oh yeah, this is like the first level of Contra NES that I remember and love. And then like it keeps going and you're like, oh, they've taken a lot of liberties in terms of like modernizing the level design and like expanding it. And I would say that a lot of the big beats remain, but they have changed so much fundamentally. It almost feels more like a spiritual successor than a
Okay.
remake of that original Contra on NES. I was most excited to just get like, I mean, I not that I'm disappointed in this one for not doing this, but like I was going in thinking like, oh, it's just going to be like a modernized 1-to-1 remake of it. But there were some things in here that like, oh, well, they skipped this level, or they didn't do this, or this gameplay sequence is not there, or this level is completely different.
Mhm.
But the gameplay feels really good. They take the kind of run and gun bullet hell that Contra has been known for, and bring that forward with like all the HD visuals and everything, and also they upgrade the gameplay a little bit, or I guess a lot, but like the core gameplay itself still has like the you can aim in any direction, shoot your gun, you can jump and shoot down, and then also you can go prone, but they also have the you can pull one of the triggers and your guy will stay in place and you can aim and 360 degrees. So that's nice
Oh,
to be able to
like
do that.
you stop and then okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, gotcha.
Almost like think Yoshi when he goes to aim an egg.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Um, but the gameplay feels great. Fun power ups, like the spread shot still rules like it did in the original Contra games. There's like a laser, there's heat seeking missiles. Those are super fun. There's a new ability called overloads where if you like, because you have hit points. I mean, well, I guess there's multiple modes. You could do hit points or you could do one hit kills. And if you have hit points or at any time, really, if things get like really dire, you can hold the left trigger and it'll charge up an overload, and each power up has its own overload, and like one of them will like give you a barrier, but it sacrifices the weapon power up in the process. The other one will
Okay.
like summon drones to shoot alongside you. So like in a boss battle, like I'll be like, oh no, like I'm not going to survive this. I'll call like those drones in and do a lot of damage to them. So like when I die and I come in my next life, I don't, because when you die, you lose the power up.
Mhm.
You can have two stocked or two in your inventory, one active and one kind of like in reserve, and the one that's active is the one you lose when you die. So like if you have like the spread shot and you die, you lose that, but then you might have the heat seeking missiles in your reserves. So that is a fun strategic element on top of it, the overload, because you know you're sacrificing the power up to get like that little boost, and like the spread shot, it just shoots like your own bullet hell, basically like a barrage of like bullets just that bounce around the screen and just take out enemies. That's really powerful. The difficulty is maddening.
Oh yeah. Okay. I mean
At
that's
a
Contra, but is it across it's like a bridge too far?
I was playing on normal difficulty and I was just like, how am I ever going to beat this?
Oh yeah.
And then
Okay.
I remember, like, I mean, I eventually got better, but I bumped it down to easy just to see like how much different it is. And I didn't get through the first level, the first attempt that I had on easy. And I was like, that's not a good sign, especially since I'm
Oh
trying
yeah.
to play through this and review it. And like that usually necessitates beating a game. And I'm dying on level one, which
That's
doesn't
yeah,
bode
that's
well.
intimidating. You're like, "Oh my god, what have I signed myself up for here?"
Yeah. So, but I did get through it.
Oh great. Congratulations. I'm impressed.
But yeah, the thankfully there are some checkpoints in the levels. Like at the first time I died, I guess I didn't hit a checkpoint because like the levels are super long in this version. Like some of them I think take more than 10 minutes to get through, and it's like that's a little too long.
Mhm.
But there are several different modes. So there's story mode that has two-player co-op and cutscenes and dialogues, and there's 8 levels and multi-phase boss battles. And some of the boss battles are really good. Some of them are a little forgettable, but like, you know, a lot of them are enhanced versions of what we saw in the NES game, and other
Mhm.
ones I don't recall showing up. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I played the NES game, like I said, it was one of the first video games I ever played in my life back when I was a kid. And I don't remember some of these boss battles and levels, but it's also been a while since I played the original Contra, so maybe I'm just forgetting.
Yeah.
There's also an arcade mode which has up to 4-player co-op. There's no cutscenes or dialogue. Same 8 levels, but the bosses can actually have additional moves and attacks in arcade mode. So that's interesting. And then there's challenge mode, which has like mini missions, and there's 30 different ones of those. They have different conditions like speed running, unlimited ammo, survival of like waves of enemies. And you know, I had a really good time with it. I'm still exploring like the challenge mode and the arcade mode a little bit, but I've made it through the story, and it's a dumb, fun 80s action style story. They definitely added a lot to that front from the
Yeah.
NES version because, like, not a whole lot of story to that original game. And there was a fun tease at the end. I mean, seems to hint that they're doing another remake style Contra game in the future.
Yeah. Do you
Um,
think any idea of which one they would go for? I mean, I would want 4. I feel like 4 is
there is a
the
very
favorite.
obvious one that they are hinting at,
Oh, really?
and
Okay.
I don't want to spoil it.
Okay,
I
okay.
can tell you
Off
afterwards if
mic,
you
you
would
can tell
like,
me. Yeah, I'd be curious.
but I don't want to spoil it here. But yeah, there is a demo if you'd like to check it out for yourself. But otherwise, Contra Operation Galuga is available now on pretty much every modern platform. So
What
if
were
this
you
sounds up
playing
your
it on
alley,
Switch?
I played it on Switch. It
Okay,
ran fine. I've heard that it runs much better on other platforms, but I've not had a chance to check out like the PS5 version or anything.
gotcha.
But aside from long load times, I didn't really have any complaints about the performance on Switch. Oh, and also there are additional characters that you can unlock, as well as abilities, not only specific to those characters, but as you play, you earn credits in the game, and then
Mhm.
you can use those credits to buy different perks. And like some of them are like each life has an extra hit point, or each playthrough you start with an extra life, and so that definitely helps with the difficulty. And then other ones, it's like, oh, this gives this character a better dash, or this character gets like, after getting hit, they have a longer invulnerability period. So you can actually choose to upgrade your characters. And then like different characters have abilities baked into them. Like there's like this one character who can hover, and another character who has like kind of like a slide dash. Um, so there
That's cool.
are reasons to experiment with the different characters that you can unlock. And the Konami code, by the way, is in the game, but it's not in the traditional sense. So you may remember that the Konami code in Contra on NES, if you entered it, you would get 30 lives because that game was so difficult. They were like, oh, that's the only way you can beat this game is like if you do that to get 30 lives. And you can still enter that at the title screen at a certain spot. However, it only unlocks an extremely expensive perk that grants you 30 lives. I think it's like 7,500 credits. And I think that like for beating a level, I got something like in between like 15 and 20 credits. So like,
Oh, weird.
you're going to
Okay.
have to play this for hours upon hours if you want to ever have enough, unless there's like a better way to farm credits that I'm just not aware of.
Is it like a permanent upgrade that you buy, kind
Yeah,
of?
it's like a roguelite structure where it's like
Oh,
you
okay,
buy these
okay.
perks and then you can equip them if you would like.
Right, okay.
But you have to earn the credits through gameplay. But like it seems like it's such a drip feed of credits. Unless I'm missing the primary way to farm these credits. But like even after beating the game, I only could afford like a couple of these perks, and they were not the expensive ones.
Mhm.
So that is Contra Operation Galuga, again available now on all modern platforms, and another one that's available now on all modern platforms. I had a chance to play through Comp 2, QOMP2, which is described by the publisher Atari as a long-awaited sequel to Pong, and it has 30 levels. And basically, the way that I would describe this game, it's almost like a puzzle platformer, but it's not really like platformy at all. It's interesting because you're controlling the ball essentially from Pong,
Okay.
and you're going through these mazes, and they're like obstacle courses and mazes, and each time you hit the button the ball redirects, right? So it turns 90 degrees.
Oh, interesting, okay.
So like if it's going up, you can make it go down, and you can only change it in the direction that it's going. So it's not going to go like, you can't do like a complete change of direction. It's just like up or down in the direction you're already going.
Okay, wait, is that technically, not to, like, it's semantics, but is that 180 degrees?
No, that would be if you were changing your direction completely.
Okay, but you're saying you go up, you press a button, you go down?
But you're going diagonally.
Oh, okay, yes, alright, cool, that explains it for me, thank you.
So yeah,
Okay.
you're being propelled forward, and then you bounce off walls, so then you're propelled backwards. But you can only change the direction of up or down in the direction that you're going.
Gotcha, okay, I see.
So
Yeah, I see, that's interesting.
you have to get through, and like there's like some where it's like, all right, there's this really narrow passageway, and there's spikes all around, and you have to like navigate it and like direct it in such a way that it bounces off one wall, bounces off another, and then goes through the passageway that you're trying to get without hitting the spikes. So a lot of like trajectory calculations going on there. And then there's also like some where it's like, oh, well, there's like this blue obstacle, and there's the only other button you can press that does anything is a charged up shot. So you hold a button and it charges up, and then you can release it and it shoots forward real fast, and that can affect any blue objects. Like that'll either destroy them, or if they're like an object on a track, it'll move them.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you the option to do that. There's also boss battles in this.
Oh, funky.
And like they are actual bosses. It's not like, oh, well, this is just like a harder puzzle. It's like, no, there's like a giant snake creature, and like you have to kind of avoid his attacks until like the opportunity opens up, and then you have to hit his weak point. And it's like, that's really interesting that they implemented that. But it works mostly. But this is another one of those games where it is hard. Like,
oh yeah,
it gets extremely difficult. There are times where I'm just like, how am I supposed to do this? But I did it. I beat the game.
Why are you assigning yourself these hard ass games?
Well, because they all look like, oh, these will be short.
Right.
Excuse me. And they look like they'll be short. And then I get started because like 30 levels, and I played like through 2 of them in the first few minutes, and I'm just like, okay, well, I can do 30 of these. They're bite-sized levels.
Yeah.
Some of them are a little bit longer, but they're not like huge, and it's still a fairly short engagement time. Like it was probably only like 5 or fewer hours to get through the entire game, but it was still like there were plenty of times where I'm like, how is anybody reasonably expected to do this?
Yeah, right, sure. Yeah.
And it's frustrating because like it resets you back at the checkpoint that you hit, but all of the stuff that you've done in the level also resets to when you cross that checkpoint. So like if you've navigated through this and like knocked blocks over so that like it clears a passageway, and like drawn out an enemy and had them get caught so they can't attack you, it's like, man, like they just it sucks when like you hit that and it resets all of your progress from the last time you hit that checkpoint. It's not just your position resets, it's everything.
Yeah,
that's a little frustrating and also like arduous at times. But you know, it's another one of those games that I was like really frustrated. There were times I was playing it on a plane where like I would make a mistake and like have to reset, and like I'm sure the person next to me was like, what is this guy doing? Because I'd be like sitting there completely still holding my Switch, and then I'd like thrust my arms up and down like like, oh, I can't believe that just happened. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on a plane. I should probably not be like going into like physical temper tantrums.
Yeah, probably not.
But yeah, Comp 2 available across all modern platforms as well.
Can you spell it again for me? I know you spelled it earlier.
QOMP2. So basically there was a game called Comp or Quamp that came out. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. I'm just going to say Comp because there's no U after the Q. Yeah. There was a game called Comp that came out, and it's the same concept, and it was pretty well liked. And the guy was like, well, I don't want to make another one. But Atari was like, hey, what if we bought the rights to this IP from you to develop new games in this series? And I guess the guy sold it to him. And then they gave it to the developer behind Mr. Run and Jump, which I've talked about on this podcast in the past.
Right.
Which, you know, I reviewed that as well. And it was a pretty good game. It was a pretty good, difficult, again, platformer. But yeah, good pedigree behind it, fun concept, and if you don't mind a little bit of difficulty, I recommend both of these games. Consider both of them kind of like honorary eShop gems of the week, even though they're also both pretty new releases in the past couple of weeks. But yeah, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. If you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at allthingsnintendo@GameInformer.com or hit me up on social media at Brian P. Shea. You can also join the Game Informer community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel, even just for 1 month. Kyle, where can the masses find you on the internet?
You know, Blue Sky these days predominantly. Yeah, probably Kyle Hilliard over there.
Blue Sky, still waving that banner, huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of game journalist type people seem to be sort of congregating over there.
Interesting.
for whatever reason. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of Twitter alternatives. I mean, threads and stuff as well. But Blue Sky is just, I don't know. It's where I'm seeing a lot more the most familiar faces. If that makes sense.
I've been doing the threads lately, more and more. A lot less jerks on threads than I'm used to on these style things. But I have seen some of the dumb Twitter takes making their way over to threads lately.
It's all inevitable.
But yeah, hopefully the dust settles on these. We have to post on 7 different platforms.
Right. Yeah.
But that is our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time.